Welcome to the Action Network studio in New York City. I'm Maria Marino, and this is Green Dot Daily. We're live every weekday at 3 Eastern on the Action app, and if you're watching on YouTube, make sure you're subscribed to our channel. Today on the show, we'll have Tim Kalinowski make sense of the college football playoff selection, and Mike Calabrese will break down the college basketball slate. But we start in the NBA. Quarterfinals of the in-season tournament started on Monday night. The three-seeded Pelicans beat the Kings 127-117 behind 30 points from Brandon Ingram. They'll take on the winner of the Lakers and the Suns in the semifinals. Great atmosphere in Indy, where the Pacers as 4.5-point dogs beat the Celtics 122-112. Tyrese Haliburton notched a 26-point triple-double to send the Pacers into the semis, where they will meet the winner of the Knicks and Bucks. Let's say hello to Jay Money. Last week on this show, you said you would not bet the Celtics to win the in-season tournament without Kristaps Porzingis healthy. That intuition proved to be correct. What's your reaction to the Pacers win last night?
Yeah, I'm still pretty hyped from that game, Maria. To be honest with you, I did have the Pacers plus 5.5. I did think that they had a chance to win, and they were just a more motivated team, right? This team is like last in the league in total payroll. These guys wanted it. You could see the bench going crazy over there. So I was pretty hyped about that game last night, watching it at the sportsbook.
Yeah, you mentioned the motivation, and I remember you also saying last week, like, the Celtics have their eyes on winning a title, so maybe they might overlook this particular situation. And tonight we have two more teams trying to punch their tickets to Vegas, starting with the top seed in the East, the Bucks, hosting the Knicks. What are your thoughts on this matchup?
Yeah, this is a tough matchup here. I can say that the Knicks are probably top to bottom the more complete team, but I know when it comes down to crunch time, I kind of trust Damian Lillard and Giannis Antetokounmpo a little bit more here. Obviously, that pick and roll is absolutely unstoppable here, and Dame has been very vocal about wanting to get to Vegas and win the NBA Cup. Now, we know Dame hasn't won anything. He hasn't came close to winning a championship. So this will be his closest to getting a trophy there. And I think Dame is going to be very motivated in this game. I do think I have a slight lean to the Bucks winning this game, but I would give Damian Lillard over his points a really good look. I really think he's going to be turned up for this matchup here tonight.
I agree with you. Even though the Bucks are expected to contend for a title, they still have a lot to prove here with this new formation with Damian Lillard involved. So I agree. They're pretty motivated. I'd say more so than your typical like title contender. But in the nightcap, we got the number one seed in the West, the Lakers hosting the Suns. These teams have played twice so far this season. Both games went the Lakers' way, although Devin Booker didn't play in either of those. So what do you expect tonight?
Yeah, well, Devin Booker's in this time around, and he's looking like a possible MVP candidate if he can stay healthy enough. He's already missed 9 games this season, unfortunately. But I take a look at Devin Booker's points and assists prop over in this one. Like I say, he's a matchup nightmare for really any team. You really have to double team him. But I could see the Suns coming out here hot in the first quarter, and the Lakers doing exactly what they did in the last game in Phoenix and storming away in the fourth quarter in this one. So the Lakers, obviously, they have a lot to prove as well. I can say, just like the Celtics, Maria, that the Suns might have their eyes on bigger prizes. It's not that they don't want to win the tournament, but I do think that they have their eyes set on the finals. We know they keep getting deeper and deeper into the playoffs and getting knocked out. But my play for this game is actually going to be a prop in this one. I'm going to look towards LeBron James going under his 2.5 3-pointers made in this one. He's only went over this number once in the last 5 games, and I think this matchup is a little bit better for him in the mid-range and getting to the paint. We know the Suns, they're not the best defensive team, and Nurkic, outside of him, they don't really have a ton of paint protection as well. So I think this matchup presents a little bit better for LeBron to get to the rim and hit those mid-range jumpers. I don't think that his shot's going to be falling from 3-point range tonight, or at least I hope not.
I feel like you can never go wrong with LeBron. Just attack the paint. You know, still at his age, he has that motor. I did think it was interesting, though, through 20 games this season, he's shooting 38% from 3. That would be his highest in a Lakers uniform. By the way, first meeting against the Suns, he made 1 triple. Second meeting, he made 3. So if we get a happy medium there at 2, you would be happy, Jay.
Yeah, I would be really happy. And just one last thing, Maria. I did notice that the Lakers have not covered back-to-back games in their last 18 games. So for whatever reason, it's been win loss against the spread, and they are coming off of a win versus the Houston Rockets. So I thought that was a little crazy stat there.
Definitely. Good note there. Jay Money, thanks so much for joining the show.
Anytime, Maria.
Sticking with the NBA, here's a look at Tuesday's top prop according to Action Pro, which you can access with a subscription. Malik Beasley to go over 5.5 rebounds and assists. The pro line is at 6.9, so this gets a grade of A with a 17.5% edge. Action Network writer Bryan Fonseca joins me in studio now. Good to see you. Monday, we saw lower seeds win both quarterfinal games. In the case of the Knicks, do you think they can pull off an upset against the Bucks?
I do, actually, because I think that this tournament is kind of March Madness-y, and I think the Knicks actually match up a little bit well with the Milwaukee Bucks, because when you take into account how they played them the first time around, Jalen Brunson, who we're going to get into in a second, is somebody who really exploded in that game. Julius Randle did not, and Jalen Brunson being the catalyst against Milwaukee's weak perimeter defense, I would say, generously. That's something that could potentially lead them to victory and lead them to a cover. Right now, they're +5. I actually kind of like that. I may stay away from it ultimately because the Knicks kind of scare me a little bit because their offense can really come and go is what I want to emphasize there. But Jalen Brunson being the catalyst, that's something I would be tantalized by.
Okay, so what are you willing to bet?
So Jalen Brunson, I have on the Action Network app over 25.5. It is now 27.5 points, and I still kind of like it because of what we saw last time out. On November 3rd, when these two teams played each other, Jalen Brunson went over by a lot. He had 45 points against the Milwaukee Bucks perimeter defense. He was able to get inside, get to his mid-range jump shot, get into the post, really showcase that floater at will, and the entire game is just Brook Lopez, come here. Brook Lopez, come here. High screen and roll. Brook Lopez, come here. Come here. And it's just floater after floater, mid-range jumper after mid-range jumper, and I think Jalen Brunson could channel a lot of those same things. And I would say that if you do like the Knicks to cover and potentially win, take Jalen Brunson over because that's how they'd have to do it. Julius Randle was very inefficient last time these two teams played. Julius Randle shot 5 for 20 from the floor, was not making a lot of three-pointers either, still wound up with 16 and 12, but I think this is a Jalen Brunson game if it goes well for the Knicks.
Even if the Knicks don't cover, you do expect them to compete, and when that happens, it's when Jalen Brunson is playing well, and he is averaging 24.9 points per game on the season, and he tends to need to score more, I think, against the better opponents like the Bucks. Bryan Fonseca, thanks so much.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Hey everybody, it's Joe Dellera, and I've got a couple of my favorite plays for the in-season tournament today. The first play that I'm looking at in the first game is the New York Knicks +5.5. One of the biggest strengths that the New York Knicks have this season compared to the rest of the NBA is their level of continuity between last season and this season. And this early, and we have games of such importance, it's very important to have that level of trust and continuity throughout the roster. The Knicks are 5th in net rating, and their offensive rating at 115.8 is in 11th, but their defense is 4th at 110.1 per Basketball Reference. The Knicks are the best rebounding team in the league with a 53.2% rebounding percentage, and those rebounds are critical for cutting down their opponent's second chance opportunities and to give the Knicks extra possessions. And this is a significant edge that they have over the Milwaukee Bucks, who have dropped from a 52% rebounding percentage last season down to 49.8%, which takes them below the midpoint in the league. I think that the spread is overrating the Bucks based on their star power, and I like the Knicks to really keep it close and possibly even win outright. So I'll take the Knicks +5.5. That one advantage that I mentioned before was the Knicks having that rebounding edge. And one player that I think is going to play a huge part in that is Josh Hart. And I like him to go over 5.5 rebounds. He's a player that Coach Tibbs trusts. He's seen an uptick in his minutes lately, especially with Quentin Grimes struggling. He's averaging 7.4 rebounds per game this season, and he's grabbed 9, 8, and 10 boards against the Milwaukee Bucks over the last 2 seasons. When he's played 25 or more minutes during the playoffs, he averaged a whopping 8.6 rebounds per game. So like I mentioned before, the Bucks are ranked 18th in rebounding percentage, and Hart is going to be able to take full advantage of that matchup in this opportunity here. So I love this play, and I'm going to take him to go over 5.5 rebounds against the Milwaukee Bucks. The final play that I'm looking at is from the other game between the Los Angeles Lakers and the Phoenix Suns, and the player that I'm targeting is LeBron James. LeBron always seems to step up during these kind of games where the stakes are just a little bit higher. And LeBron is averaging 25 points, 8 rebounds, and 7.5 assists during the in-season tournament. And in the playoffs, we've seen that jump to 9.9 rebounds. So I think his rebounding line is just a bit too low here at 7.5. When LeBron's aggressive, it doesn't always mean that he's going to be scoring more points. But what it does mean is that he's going to be active on the glass and trying to kickstart the offense on the fast break. Last year in the playoffs, he went over 7.5 rebounds in 14 of 17 games. And even this season, he's recorded 8 and 11 against the Phoenix Suns. So I like LeBron to go over 7.5 rebounds. So to recap, my favorite plays for today's in-season tournament quarterfinals are the New York Knicks plus 5.5, Josh Hart over 5.5 rebounds, and LeBron James over 7.5 rebounds. Best of luck on your wagers today, and enjoy the rest of your Tuesdays.
To college basketball, the marquee matchup of the night has number 9 UNC taken on number 5 UConn down the block at MSG at 9 Eastern. Such a pretty graphic here. A couple of blue bloods. Yes, I said it. UConn's a blue blood. 60% of bets and 70% of money is coming in on UConn, minus 5.5. 51% of bets and 63% of money is also on the under 150.5. With that, we bring in college hoops expert Michael Calabrese, and this should be a fun one at the Garden. Two fan bases always tending to show up, even in New York City. What do you think is going to happen tonight?
I'm just going to enjoy this one because it actually landed exactly on my power rankings, and I never like to fade UConn at home. I can already hear it echoing at the Garden. UConn Huskies, their fan base absolutely shows out. And while it is going to be a battle of the bigs between Klingon and Armando Bacot on the low block, RJ Davis has given me pause just because he's played so well for the Tar Heels in recent games. And because of that, I think they're going to have a puncher's chance in this one. Obviously, Newton for UConn has really upped his game coming off a tremendous performance in a loss against Kansas. So I think this could go either way from a point spread perspective. So I'm just going to sit on the sideline and enjoy what should be one of the marquee games really up through the Christmas season.
Absolutely. Both teams currently at 7-1. As for the rest of the slate, we're going to name a few other matchups this evening. You tell us whether you would bet or pass. Ready?
Let's do it.
First up, the earlier matchup at MSG, Florida Atlantic versus Illinois. Bet or pass?
I can go ahead and bet here. I like the total under 146.5. FAU, even though they have a lot of great offensive weapons and Golden has really improved on the low block, they still prefer to slow it down. They're 179th in adjusted tempo. And when you look at their possessions per game, they're actually buried in the 200s. But critically, both of these teams are top 40 in terms of their defense and efficiency via Ken Pom and Bart Torvik. And because of that, I also see Illinois potentially shooting their way out of this game. They take a lot of three-pointers, 26 per game, but they only connect on 32% of them. That's 183rd in the country. So if they're not falling, I think this goes under comfortably. I see this game played in the high 130s and not in the mid 140s.
Got it. Well, next we have Providence at number 19, Oklahoma. Bet or pass?
This one's a pass for me, and it really comes down to not really knowing what I have yet here with Kim English in year one. I always love to bet Providence. I know they have a new name for their arena, but I still refer to it as the Dunk. When they're at home, they're a play-on team for me, but this is their first true road test under a first-year head coach. Meanwhile, OU has quality wins recently over Iowa and USC. And the reason also that it's a pass, it's a strength on strength battle. So I don't necessarily see one team having the upper hand because OU is top 10 in shooting efficiency and Providence is top 10 in shooting efficiency defense. So I'm going to learn a lot about Providence in this game. I already have a pretty good feeling that Oklahoma is going to be a top 4 team in the Big 12.
Okay, how about number 23, Wisconsin at Michigan State in the Big 10? Bet or pass?
Let's go ahead and buy low here on the Spartans. I'll lay the 5.5. I'm going to fade Wisconsin coming off a huge win. This is a letdown spot after beating Marquette, number 3 team in the country. And Michigan State, I understand that they've taken their lumps already. I think the national, perspective on them is that they're a little bit down. But you look at who they lost to. James Madison, undefeated, ranked in the top 25. Duke still in the top 25. Arizona, now the new number 1. And it was a one-possession game with Arizona with under 2 minutes left. So Michigan State, I think, is a team that you can buy low here because when you look at the Ken Pom luck rankings, they're 354th out of 362 teams. They're due for a positive regression from deep. They're shooting 332nd nationally from three-point range. I see them finally breaking through because if they get a little bit luckier on offense, some of these shots fall, they make their foul shots, their defense is still elite, top 15 in a lot of key metrics. So I'll go ahead and take Sparty late in the 5.5.
All right, and because we know you're such an expert in this space, you probably have a best bet that might be on a more obscure game. So we're going to get your bet for the rest of the slate, but in the spirit of college basketball, we're going to put you on a 30-second shot clock, and it starts now.
All right, finger up. We got to run our top play here. UNC Asheville catching a 1.5 at Kennesaw State. Here's what you need to know about the Owls. The Owls are the fastest team in the country in terms of pace, but UNC Asheville, I think, essentially, after making the NCAA tournament last year, they've been laying in the weeds. They've played 3 teams that are outside of Division I, so they didn't play their starters, so their stats are kind of a mess. But they have 2 players that are absolutely key. Drew Pember, who's one of the best stretch fives in the country, can make it through three-point range, and Fletcher AB, who's flirting with 50% from long range against the 281st best shot quality adjusted defense at Kennesaw State.
You know what, Breeze, you were just talking so fast. I was very, very impressed with that. Just maybe missed the shot clock there. Maybe a violation, but we'll accept it nonetheless.
I appreciate that. That's very kind of you. At this point, let's just say that the video equipment for the review was malfunctioning. I banked that 3-point man. Let's go UNC Asheville plus a 1.5 tonight.
Appreciate it, Breeze. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Maria.
It's time for Tim's Takeaways with Tim Kalinowski. Hey, Tim. I'm pretty excited to talk to you today, I'll be honest, because this is our first opportunity to catch up since Selection Sunday. And we all know that one-loss Alabama made the college football playoff, which meant undefeated Florida State was out. Did the committee get it right?
Oof, you're putting me on the spot here. I was hoping to kind of dodge the question and say things like the committee was in a really tough spot. The system was broken to begin with. 5 Power 5 conferences, 4 spots. If I was on the committee, I would have probably voted the same for that they did. And look, it doesn't necessarily come down to me as a Florida State, but they're 13-0. How could you do that? How could you this? Listen. The rules of this game were never fair to begin with. We're never fair. So it's like buying a house that is going to be a fixer-upper, and it's disgusting, and the floorboards are falling, dug up, and the walls are caving in, and you go down to the basement, and you're like, well, there's mold in the basement. There was a million things wrong with this before Florida State, and the outrage, I think, to me, I'm a little shocked by, because it's like, don't you people follow this? Like, if you regularly follow this, aren't you kind of like, yeah, this was gonna happen? The thing was flawed from the jump.
Okay, so you're saying you have little sympathy for those who are on the other side of you and complaining and maybe, yes, whining about who made the top 4.
It's more just, I do have sympathy for Florida State, for their fans, the players, the coaches, no doubt about it. But for the clamoring that this is some sort of outrageous injustice, and I'm telling you, you're banging your fist about some sort of injustice in a system that has no rules. This is the same hierarchy, this sport, that thinks it's a good idea in the name of football to have schools in Eugene, Oregon, and Seattle, Washington, travel to Piscataway, New Jersey for a swim meet in the name of football. Okay, this is the same hierarchy that told Johnny Manziel that his compensation for building his school a new $500 million stadium was a free communications degree. Okay, so why would you think any differently when it comes to the sports playoff? Someone was going to get screwed, and like, again, it gave them an out. The injury thing gave them the easiest out possible, and they were going to take that every single time. I always say, as a Clemson fan, in the ACC, like, I was always terrified when they played a close game, when they lost an ACC game, because I knew that the standard was different for different teams. And maybe that's a good thing. Maybe that's a bad thing. Maybe the SEC is better than everybody else, but I understood the rules of the game going in, and that the SEC was going to get the benefit of the doubt. The Texases were going to get the benefit of the doubt, and not the lowly ACC.
The committee says that they don't take into account who's in what conference. It's just which team do you play. But when you say strength of schedule, that's really what you mean, is that you're playing more of these better teams that happen to be in a conference like the SEC.
Well, I want to stop you there. Right? So if you tell me this, right, that they're not supposed to have conference bias or whatever.
Sure.
It's ironic that these people are all associated with universities, because if you go to college and you go to Psychology 1, the first day, if you just show up and get your name on the attendance, they tell you that it's impossible to check a implicit bias in yourself. So you can say that, but it's literally Psychology 101. Like, it's impossible to do.
Fair enough. How do you think this debate will shift next season with the 12-team format?
That the same exact thing's going to happen. The benefit of the doubts, the tiebreakers, the mulligans are going to go to the SEC, and maybe that's okay. Maybe the SEC is better than everything else. I'm an SEC guy. I love the SEC. I've once said that no American should be allowed to leave the country until they visit every SEC stadium. Okay. I believe strongly in the SEC, but the same thing's going to happen. And we just think we're going to care less because we're going to be like, well, that team had 2 losses. What did they expect? The same exact thing is going to happen. I mean, I think Arizona would be on the outside looking into this 12-team playoff if it was hypothetically this year. And Arizona is on an absolute heater. And this thing was made for an Arizona. So we're going to do the same thing over and over again.
Notice I was deliberate with my wording of that question, because initially I thought to myself, like, oh, is this going to solve the issue? And ultimately, I agree with you. No, the issue is still going to be there, just for a larger bubble of teams. But I will say this, more deserving teams will get a shot. So there's that.
They will. You're right. And look, but it's been like this trend. 2 teams is better than just the AP poll. Well, 4 teams, I mean, that's better than a 3rd team getting left out. And then it's just going to keep going and going. And Mike Calabrese has a great piece in the Action Network about this, what the 12-team playoff would look like. And it's, the same things are going to happen over and over again. I'm sorry, but I love the sport. That's the thing. I don't quit. I love the sport. I just know the rules.
Indeed. And a year from now, you and I will have something else to break down and dissect. So that's why we love it. Tim Kalinowski, thank you.
Thank you, Maria.
Remember, any picks we give out here on the show, you can easily reference by following green.daily. In the Action app, we keep track so you don't have to. That's all for this episode of Green.Daily. I'm Maria Marino. Thanks so much for hanging with me, and I'll see you again tomorrow at 3 Eastern on the Action Network YouTube channel and the Action app.